All right, we're good to go. Sup, everybody? This is Karak with ACG, and this is the International Podcast number. Forgot to get the number edition.
81.
Shit. 81? 81.
Yeah.
81. We're doing excellent. We have Sleeve, GB, Code Gangsta, Reg, Silver, and Master Tool. So this is quite a filled international podcast. Hopefully, it'll go well. I think it will. You guys will notice I don't have video up right now. I actually thought that by not doing video, it would be easier to see these guys. But it's not. But at the same time, now I don't have the camera set up. So you're just going to see the art done by a patron who, once again, I don't know the name of. I want to say thanks, though. They posted it to Twitter a couple months ago. They did a really good job capturing my dumbfounded look. It's like I'm just all surprised at life in that picture. Like, wow. Amazed by the majesty. So we're going to talk about a bunch of stuff. We're going to jump into it pretty quickly. The only thing I do want to say is you will see a Pillars of Eternity review from me, as well as one other game I can't talk about because the NDA says I can't say the name of the game. So those will come up in the next week. Does GB have anything special, or is it mostly Red Dead?
Yeah, I'm starting to focus my attention on Red Dead Redemption 2, obviously.
Awesome.
I'm still going to do Grand Theft Auto Online, but obviously that's the direction Rockstar's heading. And I'm a huge Red Dead fan, and I've been waiting like everyone else patiently for Red Dead Redemption 2. And finally, this week we got a ton of information, so yeah.
And it's always nice to see you finally be able to untether yourself from the GTA yoke, at least occasionally.
Yeah, I'll never truly break free, though.
No, it's
That's
true,
okay.
because
I
they
love
want you
GTA.
for their microtransactions. You will never truly break free.
Yeah, true.
It's impossible. Sleeve, what about you? You've got a channel. I know you don't get a chance to upload stuff crazy amounts, but do you have anything?
Yeah, I need to do a hell of a lot more. Well, if I ever finish A Way Out with my damn brother because he's so busy, that I've got half the footage for it. So that, God of War. I've been going back to a lot of PS4 stuff lately because I got Pro recently. So Infamous 2, I think I might do some streaming of.
Okay.
Never finished it. Didn't get a lot of way into it, and yeah, that could be a cool one. Second Son. I've got First Light as well, so bounce between those two, I guess. And like GB, I'm well up for Red Dead 2. But your meme on Twitter, spot on.
Yep.
Spot on. What about you, Silver? You got anything coming up?
Still playing through God of War, and yeah, still looking to get back into Pillars of the Earth, and maybe another few games on the horizon. Maybe Pillars of Eternity too when it's out.
Okay, gotcha. All right, so let's begin with the first discussion. This came up in a live live stream of Reg's where we were playing Yakuza. I don't know the name. 6, yeah, Baby
Six.
Shaker. And he was playing this game, and our experience wasn't the same as the reviews. And so it sort of became a thing where he was reading some of these reviews, and they weren't at all his experience, or I think anybody's experience even watching the game. So what I wanted to hear from him is just a little bit about what that's like to see such a difference. And then we're going to give some examples that we have where game reviews, and I don't want to diss on reviewers because they're just people. Like, we all have friends who have different, likes and dislikes than us. And things that they feel completely differently about. But I want to talk about like outliers, like the time when you saw a review and you're like, what the fuck did they play? Because they did not play the game I played. So, Reg, take over. What was it like when you started playing that and you were looking at the reviews?
Well, at the first hour or so, I thought, okay, I mean, it's a lengthy intro scene, whatever, it's fine.
Mm-hmm.
Like another 3 hours later, it was basically still the intro cutscene. With maybe 5 minutes of gameplay between, where you're just walking a couple feet and then the next cutscene plays. So they don't really let you out for a whole lot, and it really has no point of letting you out at all, apart from, hey, we did let you play a bit. Otherwise, it could just be one big cutscene. And that continues on also past the 4 hours. It gets a little bit less, the cutscene intensity, but not really by a lot. And the first time they really let you go, you get to shake a baby.
Yeah, that was creepy as fuck. Sorry.
And that's pretty much the point at which I quit for the day, at least. I did come back for, I think, 1 or 2 more hours afterwards. But for the day, that really was enough. It's like, finally, the cutscenes ended. The game lets you run around, do something, and then you...
By then, you were burned out?
every minute you have to calm down the baby. It's like,
yeah.
really, game?
When you
Come
were
on.
playing it, like I don't need you to read the reviews themselves, but like what
Yeah.
were you seeing that was like where it just wasn't reflecting what you were experiencing?
Well, from time to time, when I needed a bit of a break, I thought it would be more entertaining to read the reviews about the game than actually playing the game.
Yeah.
It was.
So I went to Metacritic and picked out the top reviews for the game, and the way the glowing reviews were nowhere near my own gameplay experience, not even close.
What do you
So I have no idea at all why they are that positive.
right?
And even if the game improves massively by the time it concludes, which I don't know because I haven't finished it,
Mhm.
I don't see how it could be rated that highly, because the first 7 hours I played so far were pretty horrible, really.
Yeah.
So even if the last 10 hours are brilliant, that
Right,
doesn't erase
right.
the first hours.
Yeah, it's that's not the way it works. Otherwise, all abusive relationships would be acceptable. It's good times and bad times. I mean, you have to look at like how they're portioned or how they're sort of portioned out and ratioed out. When you were playing it, you were reading one, and it was like it was something. It was crazy because what you were reading did not reflect anything of what you
Yeah,
played, but it was
no.
like the amazing.
It was like it's a worthy send off for the
Yeah.
beloved main character, and it's the best game in the series yet, and stuff like that. And others who are watching what I was experiencing in the game were also asking, like, how do you go from Yakuza 0, which was, I think, a legit good game, to Yakuza 6, which is just a massive, boring cutscene.
Yeah, well, we're going to speak about QTEs too, and that's what it was filled with as well. Here in a bit, because Master Tool wants to talk about some of that stuff. Is there any other game that you remember, Reg, where there was that much of a difference?
Not to that massive amount, but I don't really remember playing any game which also was that little of a game,
Oh, right,
where you just had cutscene, then 5 minutes of interaction, cutscene again.
right.
Metal Gear Solid 4.
It's more like an interactive movie than a game.
Mm.
Yeah, Metal Gear Solid 4, I guess. Yeah, which might be a good.
Well, to be fair, I didn't play that. So.
Quantum Break. Did you play Quantum Break, Reg?
I did,
Quantum
but
Break-
that was also more concentrated, wasn't it? It was
Yeah,
like, okay,
yeah.
there's a 15-minute cutscene. First off, it's only 15 minutes, not 4 hours.
Yeah, right,
And you do have gameplay between that.
right.
Yeah.
So starting out with Sleeve, is there any title you can remember that when you were playing it and then you saw the reviews and you were like, and even if it's my review, feel free. But is there
There's
like
a fairly obvious one. It's going to bring up an individual that Silver and I don't particularly have a fondness for, and that's Heavy Rain. I remember when it came out, and a lot of the
oh dear
reviews-
God, dear God, we're going to talk about this again. All right, Heavy Rain, go.
Well, it was like 8s and 9s, if I remember the reviews. Like,
Right.
This is art, wonderfully woven narrative, amazing characterization. Jog on, was it? It was terrible in places. It was not the worst game I've ever played by a long shot, but it was not reflected well in the reviews. What I often find as well now is a lot of the bigger sites seem to just think of games that are a little bit higher than a lot of the more down to earth YouTubers do, and a lot of the players do. I certainly find that on the bigger websites anyway.
When you were looking at the David Cage game, did you beat it? Did you beat
Yeah.
Heavy Rain? So
Yeah.
one of the things I always tell people,
And Beyond and Fahrenheit.
no, yeah, but in Heavy Rain in particular, I do believe that most of the time, like Reg was saying, it could get better in that last 10 hours, but that wouldn't magically like change his entire idea of a game. But one thing I do want to ask is if you were playing a game and the first 10 hours were awesome and the last 2 were terrible, could you see something like that maybe being reflected in a review? And you're
Mass Effect 3.
Mass Effect 3.
oh god,
yeah.
let's not talk about Mass Effect 3. That's just going to depress the fuck out of me.
Quantum Break, actually. Quantum Break. Not the last kind of hour and the boss battle. It was terrible.
Right.
Absolutely. It was just badly designed. But the rest of the game was decent.
Right. Would that change if you were reviewing it? Would you like drop it a severe amount for that, or would you just look at the amount of hours that were good versus those few bad, and I mean just explain it in your review? How would you go about it?
Well, with it, I think endings in games is a weird one, isn't it? Because let's face it, we all don't really get a lot of decent endings in games.
Yeah,
most games have very generic endings, or they finish abruptly, or they don't have a decent payoff. So I think you're kind of used to that, apart from very few examples otherwise. So yeah, it's weird when you're reviewing because you're trying to find a balance between the quality of what you're seeing, but also the quantity that you're getting for the hours that you're playing.
Yeah.
So it's that trade-off. But yeah, I think I do it that way around. If you've got 10 really good hours a game, but the game just ends poorly, it'll detract a bit, but not as much as if like Final Fantasy 13. The first 8-10 hours of that were terrible. Badly designed, linear, didn't open up, didn't allow for any kind of interesting gameplay. Just paradigm shift, move forward, paradigm shift, move forward. And Yakuza 6, by God, that was terrible. Like you'd walk forward, cutscene. 15 minutes later, I can turn
baby.
around. I can. Oh my God! Shake the baby.
I gotta say,
cutscene.
with Yakuza, I don't know about you, I laughed my ass off because it wasn't only shaking the baby; it was the fact that they wanted you to use your controller to do it, and there was something about holding this little baby in your and shaking it. And Reg was just
and
like,
the input didn't work. I just gave up. I waited for the 2 minutes till it was over again.
Oh yeah, that's
watching
what you
Reg
said.
shake that baby was the funniest thing I've seen in months.
Yeah, I don't think I. And what's great about it is what's amazing is so Reg had this experience. We got to watch it, and then I went and looked online because I heard you guys saying, "Oh, rereading reviews," and no one even mentioned that.
No.
Like it was like, didn't anybody find it a little weird or funny? Even funny, if you just wanted to mention that. GB,
how can it be the great? Sorry, how can it be the great ending to a series? That all these reviews are saying when Yakuza 0 is far superior so far.
Yeah,
it's an actual open world game where you can go to places.
Well, it's got gameplay, I think, is what Reg is pointing out is such a difference.
Yeah.
GB, is there any outliers that you remember for reviews for you where you were like, what the fuck?
Yeah, I mentioned this, I think, a month ago, but it was a game I really enjoyed back on the Xbox. Jaws Unleashed, where you got to play the shark.
Yeah, right.
I absolutely loved that game. And then I went to go read the reviews on it, and it got trashed by most of the sites back then. I'm like, what? They're just ripping on it. Like, I think IGN at the best gave it a 7, but everyone else was like 4s or 5s or even 2s. Oh. And I was just sitting there going like, but this game's a lot of fun. I've been playing it for hours. I've been eating surfers and beachgoers left and right. It's great.
Did you feel when you were reading it, were you like their experience isn't anything like mine, or were you understanding that their experiences were the same, but they just didn't like them as much? I mean,
I think the problem was they were trying to do all the missions and stuff, and all I really cared about was just swimming around being a shark and eating people.
Well, I don't know if missions make sense for a shark. What do you pull up a map, like a blood map or something?
Like you were trying to stop. I forgot what it was, but like the shark was actually the good guy, and the shark was stopping these mad scientists or government people, and you had to go underneath to like underground layers and like swim in and blow this stuff up.
So it was real life. I mean, obviously.
Yeah, it was real. Absolutely.
A biography of some kind.
Yeah, exactly.
Code Gangster, do you have any that you remember that were big outliers for you?
Maybe nothing that's like a big outlier. I mean, it just, like was kind of mentioned just now, gone are the days for me where I can just play a game and say, oh my gosh, this is so fun, and not have to look at any sort of reviews or discussion around what other people think of the game. And there's just so much subjectivity flying around. I mean, some things that kind of pop out are, I really like the Dark Souls series. Dark Souls 2 was like critically hammered by a lot of people for various reasons, one or another. But then there's some outliers there of people who Dark Souls 2 was just their game. And there's so many things that could contribute to that. There's, outside circumstances. You could be going through like a certain season in life, or I know for me, for Horizon Zero Dawn, it was super critically reviewed. But like when I started sitting down to play that game, I was so burnt out on open world. I just couldn't even continue. Like I know these elements are so good, but I couldn't enjoy it for what it was. So I think when it comes to reviews like that, it could be something like you're in your own kind of echo chamber of game journalism sometimes, or you're just like personally burnt out on certain genres, or just going through a different season in life. It's kind of a crazy phenomenon.
Yeah, for sure. What about you, Silver? You got any? Can't mention David Cage.
Yeah.
It's already been mentioned.
No, I mean, I think I've killed that horse and made glue of it by now.
Yeah, you have, and then eaten that glue like a school child.
Yeah, no. I'm a bit amused by the fact that it's no longer okay for a game, it seems, to just be good. Right. It has to be game of the century or whatever, like with God of War. Like you type in God of War review into Google, the first hit you get is a headline that reads, "I don't think it's possible to overstate how good this game is." And my response to that is yes. Yes, it is. You literally just did it in your headline.
Yeah.
I mean, there's this hype machine that has to go to the extreme that either a game sucks or it's good. It can't, or it's like the greatest game ever. It can't just be good. It can't just be average.
Right.
It has to be at one end of the scale or the other. And I find that doesn't really reflect on me and my experience of games.
All that much?
No, certainly not the majority of the time.
It can't just be fun either. It has to be engaging and cinematic and like all of these checkboxes.
Oh, the number of people who get mad at me for a review where I'll say fun factor was high enough that I ignored those other stuff, that people would just lose their minds. Be like, I can't believe you ignored blah, blah, blah. And I'm like, no, it's a game.
Yeah.
It's fun. So therefore, it was okay. What about you, Master Tool? Is there any game that you saw review and you were just like, what the fuck did they play?
No, I don't think so. I think I stay far away from the big review sites to avoid something like that.
Oh, gotcha. You mean you didn't see Battlegrounds at IGN? They rated it a 10 out of 10.
What?
Yeah.
We're always going to bring that up.
We're always going to bring it up. So you just stay away from them?
Yeah, but on the other hand, I'm with Silver on this one because the threshold for a good game is at this point a 7 or an 8. Everything below that is apparently bad and horrible and absolute shit, and everything above that is something, I don't know, the gods made themselves.
Yeah, the gods. Yeah, exactly. Do you find yourself then, Master Tool, buying the game and then looking at reviews, then buying the game, or just not looking at reviews at all if you can?
It's a mixture of the both, yeah.
Okay, gotcha. So
sometimes if I think the game is better than something I heard from some people, then I take a look, but most of the time I simply don't care.
Gotcha. It's good to hear that. I know for me, it is the mediocre stuff that's confusing to me too. Like Mad Max. Mad Max will always confuse me. It will confuse me until the day I die, because I just don't. There were people who were like, "This is terrible," and I was all,
I don't know what game they're playing.
I don't exactly. And even if you didn't love it, terrible is such a weird thing. And I now have been noticing, as the channel's been getting larger, if I rate something a wait for a sale, people will actually post, "Oh no, Karak rated this a wait for a sale," and I'm all, "Whoa, that means that's actually a good game. That just means it's got some issues." Like, don't put words in my mouth that I didn't put in. And if you listen to the review, I talk about these awesome things, but it had 2 crash game bugs. Or as Silver and I have talked about, to me, the biggest thing is save game corruption. If a game's got save game corruption, there's a good chance you're going to hear from me at the end of the review about it, because to me, that is one of the most egregious failures that I think I can see in a game.
I know what you need, Karak. You need like a friendly PSA that tells people exactly what each thing means. It's like, "Hi, I'm Karak."
I did.
Some of you probably wonder, what does this mean? Well,
I
here's
didn't
what
do that. I have done it a couple times. Like, how do I review games? I've done multiple videos of that, but I haven't done the PSA where like I do the fake wave at the starting, like an airline attendant, and I'm like, "Hello, my name is Karak, and today I'm going to talk about my reviews." But it is odd that we see these outliers. It is cool also that everybody sort of has a different way of doing it. Like your Master Tool say, fuck it. Like, I don't even really look at them. I think some people have to look more because of money too. So it's like a lot of people I talk about will tell me, they'll be like, "I would love to not look at reviews, but I don't have any available spending money this month except for one $60 budget for one game." And then I think reviews become hyper important for that person, because right now, the companies aren't good at refunds, for example. Well, the console companies aren't good at refunds. Steam is fine. Xbox is pretty good. Sony and Nintendo are terrible. So you get stuck with these games if you make that choice. And yeah, I mean, I see it. It sucked with Yakuza, because I know people are going to be mad in the comments, because I'm sure people really like it. But instead of getting mad, maybe what you should do is explain why you like it, because it was very confusing to everyone in that stream. There was a lot. It wasn't like 2 or 3 people. There was like 5 or 7 people watching Reg, and everybody could not figure out what was going on with the scores he was reading out loud versus what we were seeing. And so I'd like to hear from people who beat it and can say, like, maybe the ending is, or maybe after 7 hours, like, it magically Like
yeah,
that's the tutorial.
like I said, it could have suddenly massively improved, but even then, it's not a 10
What
or
if
a
you
9.
just like toss the baby in a dumpster and you're just like, and then suddenly the gameplay opens up? I would probably rate that game a buy. So moving on from there, let's talk about Red Dead Redemption. Unless anybody has anything to add, actually, about odd reviews. Anything? Okay.
Bayonetta. Everyone seems to love it. I can't really stand it. Don't know why.
Oh, you just created a legion of
There you
enemies.
go. There's not. Thing is, I
Roll
like
with the
Devil May,
bear.
I like Devil May Cry. I like those kind of games. Been playing them, a lot throughout the eras. But there's just something about Bayonetta.
Well, let's get this out of the way. I think we can all assume that Sleeve is just against incredibly powerful females as leads.
Exactly.
Oh,
Now Sleeve's
Without
in
it,
trouble. Now Sleeve's in
swine.
trouble. People are going to freak.
Lara Croft, baby.
Yeah, exactly. I hear you. Well, Aloy, even though it sounds like Kogan
Aloy,
wasn't
yeah.
in love with it, I thought she was fairly good. She wasn't amazing, but I thought she was fairly good. Hellblade was phenomenal.
Yeah, very good. Yeah.
So Sleeve, like, well, no, we won't even get into that discussion. We'll move on. Yeah, I don't want people to take that serious. That what I said, that was a joke.
It's the gameplay and the over-the-top ridiculous characters. I don't know what it is about the gameplay. I just can't click with it.
Did you play
And
Automata? Near Automata?
I haven't yet, no. It's another Platinum, though, isn't it? Platinum Games.
Yeah, and it's
Right.
not gratuitous, I guess.
Do you know, it might actually be that studio. I don't think I've ever really
Oh my
clicked with
God!
it.
What are you doing? You're killing the podcast watchability. Right now, there's panic. Right now, People are like, "What the fuck?"
I can hear the subscribers leaving.
Exactly. It's like I'm coming after him. Well, okay. So, Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles, admittedly, was terrible. Korra, I think there was a lot of people who thought that was fairly poor. What about Transformers Devastation? Don't you do it?
Haven't played it. Haven't played that
Okay,
one.
that game's. Has anybody else played that but me? Reg has played it. No?
No, not really. No.
I'm the only one who's played Transformer Devastation? God.
Yeah.
Great game. Great game.
I think the last one I played was one of the Cybertrons a few years ago. That was
The
pretty
Transformer Cybertrons. Yeah, a lot of people.
Yeah, I played that. There's two, wasn't there, decent ones?
So moving on from there, let's talk a little bit about Red Dead. A bunch of information. So we had the trailer, then a ton of information was released. We're going to start in slightly off order because GB and I both covered it in the trailer, and I want to get his thoughts. And then we'll roll back to Master Tool since he was technically supposed to be the last before Sleeve ruined the watchability of the podcast. So, what's just joking? I love you.
Sorry.
Don't cry. Don't you cry.
Didn't
Don't you
mean
cry.
it.
Yeah, of course, Sleeve.
So GB, what was there like one bit of information or that really surprised you? Was it just like sort of reaffirming what you thought? Like, what do you think of it?
What really impressed me was not really the trailer. I love the trailer. At first, you have to watch it a few times because it is kind of depressing in a weird sort of way, especially when you're like going from the point of view of the outlaw. But like the information bomb that dropped yesterday was amazing. There's a ton of information that came out because a lot of these big time publishers got to go to Rockstar for like a 45-minute demo. And they got to ask some questions. And a lot of it is the same because they're watching the same thing, but each one did take away something a little different. What overall amazed me was this world that they've created, the fact that it's a living world, unlike any other open world where the NPCs are actually doing stuff. They're not just random. Like if they're sweeping, they're actually doing a job. If they're a paperboy, they're actually doing paperboy. And if you like, for example, if you're riding along on your horse too close to somebody's barn, they'll notice you and they'll be like, "Hey, what are you doing near my property? Get the F out of here." So I kind of like that. It really feels like from everything I read, and I read a ton of articles yesterday, that this world is going to be more alive than any other open world to date. And the bonding that you're going to have with your horse, I mean, that's going to be awesome as well. The fact that, your horse is going to be a lot more important to you in Red Dead Redemption 2 than it was in the first Red Dead. And the simple things like they mentioned something about you having your hat shot off. If you don't grab your hat, it won't respawn. You'll have to go buy another hat. So it's like there are real life consequences. There's real life interactions. Like you can greet almost anybody in the game and you can decide whether or not you're going to be like just friendly or you can be antagonistic. So, I mean, it's very ambitious what Rockstar's been working on the past 8 years. And an article I just read a few minutes ago is the fact that it's not just Rockstar San Diego that's been working on this. It's the entire umbrella, the entire developers, the big ones, North, San Diego, the smaller ones, all of them have been working globally on this one game. That's how ambitious Red Dead Redemption 2 is going to be.
Yeah, for sure. Master Tool, I know prior to the podcast you said, you weren't super interested in it, but what would make you interested in, like, if I said there's a Red Dead game coming out and you sort of had your control over it, what would make you super interested in a Red Dead game? Or more interested?
Honestly, I wouldn't even care about the control. It's more that I would love to hear less cockstroking of a Rockstar, if I can call it that, because everything I heard so far sounds honestly too good. Far too good.
Oh, to be true, you mean? Yeah. That is something I worry about too, because you do have, whoa, jeez. Supernova just turned on at Reg's house. I do believe that's certainly possible that could happen.
I'll get there.
Is there is there an open world game you really do like, Master Tool, or are you sort of not a big fan of those?
My love for them is dying slowly, but God of War was pretty good.
Have you beat that yet?
Yeah.
Okay, gotcha. All right. So a Red Dead game, stuff like that, other than the Rockstar, I think there's certainly the, people sort of blowing it out of proportion definitely happens. But
yeah,
is there... But go ahead, Master Tool. Is there anything that would interest you?
Yeah. What really makes or breaks the game for me would be really the open world. Is it too big? How much access do I have from time to time? Do I have everything at once? Stuff like that.
Yeah, that makes sense. What about you, Silver? Anything interest you on the news you got?
I think a bit like Master Tool, I'm a little wary of the marketing speak. I'm sort of hearing a lot. Like, this is going to be the greatest thing ever. This is the best feature ever, especially when, like, I think some of this is stuff we've seen before in other open world games, from what I'm hearing. Like, I'm not super impressed by the Radiant AI. It sounds like it's a refinement of the Radiant AI, where you have like the blacksmith going about his duties and whatever, because we've sort of seen that before, but it'll be interesting to see how they implement it here, whether it's going to be unique to other games. But yeah, no, I'm not really, like, the whole marketing campaign and marketing push in terms for Rockstar's behalf is not really making me interested in the game. I am interested in the game on itself by the fact that I enjoyed Red Dead Redemption.
Right.
And that I'm looking forward to it. But I'm definitely wary of the marketing hype and the marketing speak that I'm hearing from them. And the, sort of seeing the development that they've undertaken with GTA Online is also giving me some serious concerns about Red Dead Redemption 2 potentially.
Right. Buy a picket fence for $5.
Yeah.
Upgrade. Paint your gang hideout for $1.99. Code Gangsta, What about you? Interested, not interested?
Fire in the saddle.
Oh yeah, definitely interested to go back and play another Western game, because we don't get a lot of those. From an open world perspective, I'm not necessarily stoked to get another open world with a bunch of millions of things to do that I'm never going to complete. My hope is that they kind of take more of a, mysterious, secretive approach to more of their systems instead of, a lot of the trend, a lot of people say it's like the Ubisoft style open world where all the systems are just there, explained in the UI, ready for you to just go and consume. And that's not fun. I think things are a lot more fun when, like playing Breath of the Wild, when you first discover how different elements kind of combine together to you kind of discover the game mechanics as you go along, and it's surprising and it's fun and it's engaging. You start questioning, okay, what else is there that I could go out and learn? I hope it's not just a big long tutorial that throws a bunch of markers on my map, but it's something I can kind of go and have fun in the sandbox and discover new things more frequently.
Yeah, gotcha. What about you, Reg?
First off, I obviously destroyed my camera.
It's funny because he's earlier than us, so he saw the supernova a couple multiseconds before we did. And it's just burned.
Yeah. No, sorry about that. Apart from that, I've not really followed Red Dead Redemption 2, as I usually do with new games. I only really started informing myself like a week before at most. So I'll just hang out till it's closer to release.
Gotcha.
And then see what is the game all about.
And then read the reviews online in a stream while you're playing it. Be like, this is the best game ever.
Exactly.
You're like, I'm shaking a baby.
Exactly.
What about you, Sleeve?
Too many towers.
Cautiously optimistic. I really like the first one. I think it's the best representation of the Western in a video game there's ever been. I dug all its kind of intricate systems, the hunting and everything else. And just like crossing over to Mexico, stuff was great. What GB has already said in terms of how the Radiant AI is going to work, as long as it's not, I mean, loads of games have Radiant AI, but it's how intricate they can be with it.
Yeah.
But with the other guys, like I've been for a really strong single player campaign that's maybe 30, 40 hours long, that is a really nice representation of the West coming to an end. I think that would be a beautiful way to kind of allow that narrative to run, and with great characters. And Rockstar generally do well with that type of gameplay. What worries me is the multiplayer. We've already seen it with GTA Online, and we've already seen this monopolizing of constant updates and money and transactions, and it's going to fester inside Red Dead, obviously. It's going to, and I think that might affect it, as long as it's not in any way related to the single-player campaign. If I see Shadow of War, anything remotely close to that kind of nonsense, then that's going to be a problem. But with the guys as well, I am slightly burnt out on open world games as well. Like, this one will look beautiful, I'm sure. The wildlife will be amazing. It'll be nice to see how the AI interacts and how the wildlife works. But it does worry me a bit how they're going to allow the map, etc., to not be overburdened by crap you have to do for no reason. So I'm going to get it. But again, it's not going to be the greatest game ever made, I don't think. I can feel there's going to be some multiplayer issues.
So for me, I sort of hint. I guess I'd sort of say I sway a little bit more on GB side, where like that's why I did the video, because I rarely do videos on game trailers. Like, how do you break down a fucking game trailer, really?
Yeah.
And other than like just pad it and talk about shit. But there was enough there.
Hey.
Plus the information. No, I mean, you did the same thing. We watched, there were articles as well. So it's like you have that data. But I will say that what I'm worried about, and I talked about this in the walk, I'm nervous it's going to turn into anarchy. And one of the reasons why I'm nervous about that is, like, they were like, your bond with your horse is the strongest bond ever. As you build it, it will not break. And I'm like, okay, well, here's the problem. One of the problems that game developers seem to be having an issue with is making the game harder at the starting is one thing, but making every character a god at the end is another. And the idea that you could have your horse break, run off, you run to grab it, then it breaks again because there's a bear, you leap on that, then a badger transforms into a chick, like in Far Cry, and and I don't want Rockstar to do that. But then you hear them say, and you hear this hint of their mission structure, which sounds phenomenal, which is that it's all verbal. One of the things they said is you can walk into town and you'll hear people talking, and that's how it doesn't pop up an alert saying, you have now got this quest. It's where you hear people talking, you have to go to whatever area you hear them talking about or do whatever they're saying, and then it says, like...
That's really cool.
Yeah.
So you like wander into a saloon, and then you'll hear like people talking at the bar. And...
Yeah. And cool. Your mobile camps, one of the things they said is the mobile camps will never go, you need to buy 10 of 10 rabbits. You need to buy 12 of 12 buckets of water. Instead, somebody will be like, they'll be unhappy. And you can look around and you can see graphically, there is not enough food here for my gang to be happy. So I need to go get food. But another thing they said, which was now a negative, is they said, if you are not there, everything will continue to run without you. And it's like, okay, you can't say it's really important I do this shit and then turn around and say it's not important I do this shit. So there's going to be this middle ground of what bonuses do you get if your gang is happy? That's what's going to be important to me. Also, do the characters react with the same rules that you do? Most games cheat, and they don't.
Yeah.
Far Cry or Fallout 4 was synonymous with enemies not having to fucking reload, of all things.
Yes.
Like, and you're sitting there reloading, and they're like, nah, with the gun is like a chainsaw. So what I'm worried about in Red Dead is, can my posse's horses break? and kick them off, because it would be cool, but it would be complete fucking anarchy if you start the game out and everybody's horses are like, fuck it, and they just buck off everybody in the middle of some sprint back to some trains. So it is balancing, but here's the thing, guys. Like, of all the companies in the world, GTA 5 and all the games, GTA 5 stunned me in the amount of just crazy shit. And shit that was not only over the top, but some of the stuff that wasn't, and how the systems came together. And that, it goes to point out the number of years they have, and the fact that they are all Scrooge McDuck. Like, there's so much money in that company that they might as well just buy Peru and live there. So to me, it seems like there's a really good chance that they have the money and the time. And we'll see a Red Dead that does all these things, is balanced well. It's also the first game without, what's his name? Leslie Bensley. Yeah, which makes me a little nervous, because regardless of what you feel, I think most people can really agree that even the people who are suing him say that he sort of saved GTA. So it'll be interesting to see how that all comes about. But yeah, it's cool, man. There's a lot of data. There was that vocal data was phenomenal. Like, that really impressed me. The idea that that's how you get quests. The animal stuff, it all depends. They said you could hunt and that your food would slowly go bad, but I'm not 100% sure I want to have to worry about that. Like, that'll be something that I hope the systems don't outweigh the fun. You know,
if it has too many survival elements, then it shouldn't be about that.
I don't want to.
Oh, and about that.
I said in my video, I didn't see anybody mention in particular crafting, and I hope there's not one. My God, I don't want the posse making a spear. Like, if that fucking happens, I'm gonna kill myself. If they're all right, everybody, let's get the flint and the fucking, and you're making a spear and you do that crafting, I'll kill myself. I can't. I'm done. I'm done with every game having a crafting system. I mean, wouldn't you guys agree? Every game doesn't need a crafting system.
And I'm also
it doesn't.
Also a bit done with like every game character now having to have a bow. Like, that was one of my main issues with the first Red Dead trailer was that character using a bow doesn't really seem particularly believable that he would use a bow over a rifle.
Well, and this one, it makes sense because it can, less damage is done to the meat if you use a bow and arrow to kill a deer or a rabbit. So that makes sense because you can end up getting better quality meat, or you can sell it for a higher price. And it's also good for stealth kills. So if you're going into a situation where you want to stealth kill your enemies, you're going to have to use a bow and arrow as opposed to a 6-shooter.
So I agree with that, but at the same time, I don't, because there's also a part where they said, because he is an ex-debt collector, the main character is an ex-debt collector, he's got all these new fight ways, and he's rough and tumble. It looks like there'll be a fight club in the game. Yeah. So it's I would like to know when he picked up the bow skills, and why he has them, and why he's worried about food going bad. If he was, I guess as a
the fur trappers of the frontier didn't really run around using bow and arrows all that much. They mainly used muskets.
Did they? I wasn't alive back then, so I think you're a liar. No, I'm just joking. I have no. But I agree. It could be awesome, but it could also be one of those moments where you're wondering, why they have that weapon. But we'll see, man. I mean, I'm stoked. I'm also nervous about the dynamic weather system, but we'll see as we get farther along how they do that. Has there been a game, anybody here, has there been a game where particulate actually builds up in snow, where snow falls and that snow then colors your textures? And
Rise of the Tomb Raider, I thought it did.
So it went from, I should make sure I'm framing this. So it went from a green, a normal ground, and then slowly built to snow. The particle systems built particulate.
No, that it didn't, but it does build on Lara Croft herself.
Okay, but I'm talking about the world. Do we know of any?
Yeah, the world itself.
Is done? Okay.
No. I think Frostpunk does it.
Is it?
Well,
I think so.
I mean, open world.
We shut off one of the generators, and it gets cold again. The snow starts piling up again.
Yeah, no, that is right for Frostpunk. I should have said open world, is what I'm talking about. So I'm talking like a Far Cry. Primal didn't do it with rain or extra puddles. Some games will add puddles for water.
Yeah. I really wouldn't count GTA Online when they do snow days, because I think that's just automatic. Moment it's that's
it's
the illusion that it's been snowing. Yeah.
I can't think of much. I mean, you've got the fire in Far Cry, obviously, when it burns through the grass and it'll spread and the grass will remain burnt and brown. That's really cool. but not snow. Not off the top of my head, anyway.
Were you going to say something, Code Gangster? Looked like did you have any examples?
Oh no, I was just thinking. I mean, as far as like volumetric snow implementations, it's not snow that actually falls to the ground, but I know God of War has that kind of volumetric implementation for at least people carving through the snow.
And so does Horizon Zero Dawn's expansion.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah, and footprints remaining. And
the
stuff,
reason why I bring it
Right.
up, just so everybody understands, the reason why I bring it up is because most developers will cheat, and so they'll have a snowy area, then they'll have a border area where snow falls but doesn't color the ground, and then they'll have areas outside of that where snow never falls. But we're seeing these, they're talking about dynamic weather and stuff, and so I was wondering if it was possible technically, which I don't think it is. That's asking a freakish amount from, whatever, even a PC with, advanced CPUs and stuff.
Yeah.
Like.
Well, from what I read, is like there's like at the top of the map is like a snowy wasteland.
Yeah.
And then all the way down at the bottom is going to be swamps, like New Orleans-esque. So I think it's going to be very similar to how they did Red Dead Redemption with the different areas.
Yeah.
And you go further up. Yeah, there is snow, but that's as far as the snow is going to be. Like everything else is snow-free.
Another thing I want to know is, and I talked about it in the Walking the Walk, is I'd like to know if the animal spawns change, because if you have snowy creatures, do they extend if snow falls somewhere else?
From what I read, each region has different animals that would make sense to be in that area. And I guess the snow may have an effect on certain animals. Like certain animals can only survive. Yeah.
Yeah.
Like rabbits are going to, like most of the time, they're going to go hide and hibernate, and they're not going to come out of its snow. So you probably won't see animals that wouldn't do so well in the snow. So I can imagine that, that's how it's going to work. Like in different regions, you'll find unique animals that you're not going to find everywhere else.
You know what's hilarious? Code Gangster said he hopes a little bit mysterious, and so do I, because I just read a Gamma Sutra article for State of Decay, which was awesome. It talked about all of its spawns and everything. But once it got done, I was like, uh-oh. Because now you know. Now you know. And I don't necessarily think we always need to know. Like, I don't know if you guys remember, but GTA 5, when it first came out, the animals would call 911. Did you guys ever read that story? Yeah.
Yep, because they're technically NPCs.
Yeah, they were technically NPCs, and all of a sudden Rockstar was like, oh, fuck, that's not what we want. So they fixed it. But I don't necessarily need to know at all. It's fun for us to talk about it, but I am a little nervous that, we'll, like this animal system, it'll probably just be something that I barely even bump into. But I do find myself going, I wonder if snow rabbits come out more when it's snowing. It's like, who fucking cares, really? Like, it's probably a dumb question for me to ask. So moving on from there, unless anybody has anything else to add about Red Dead Redemption. Is there any other?
Just the narrative, character-wise. Obviously, they tried 3 characters in GTA.
Yeah.
You've got Morgan and a posse. So are we going to just lead that posse? Are we going to bounce between different characters in that posse? How many of them are going to be?
John Marston's
Everything
playable at some point, right?
I don't know if that's going to be true or not, but from what I read, unlike Grand Theft Auto 5, it's going to be solely Arthur Morgan.
Okay.
Now, it could be similar to like where somewhere near the end of the game, maybe for some reason you switch
it out.
Okay.
Yeah, not trying to spoil Red Dead Redemption, but technically Red Dead Redemption does have 2 characters you play as. But that could eventually happen. We don't know, but for the most part, everything I read points to only one protagonist, which made a lot of people very happy.
Not me. Couldn't
Not
be
you.
more anti-happy. No, I think single protagonist sucks beyond all belief. The idea, the triple protagonist in GTA 5 was stunning to me. It was,
I liked it.
It was the best part of the game for me, and it was so different. No other game did that.
Yeah.
Going and seeing Trevor puking in a fucking dumpster, and then jumping to Michael, and Michael like on the corner of some questionable street, and you're wondering if like there's a prostitute with him. Like there's all these weird, mysterious. It's funny that Code Gangster brought it up because that's sort of what I liked. Is what are these other characters doing? I get that you probably would have a terrible story, though, in this game if you did that. So I'm okay with it.
I liked it, too, but this is my issue with it. I feel like it's kind of a lightning in the bottle scenario where, like, it worked for Grand Theft Auto 5, but it may not necessarily work for another game.
Yep, exactly. Or at least this game. Yeah, if you're trying to
tell unless you're going to have the posse going off and doing different things.
That's what I thought
totally different separate missions.
And if you go by Red Dead Revolver, you technically had additional protagonists. You had Red Harlow, but you also did at least one mission with all the other characters like Jack Swift, like Nightwolf, etc. So technically, you could say that the very first Red Dead game also had multiple protagonists.
You know, Nightwolf sounds like the coolest helicopter ever.
Was it Nightwolf?
I don't know. But
That's Mortal Kombat.
I hope they name I hope they name the next helicopter the Nightwolf, because that just sounds fucking evil. It's like the Apache.
Sequel to the Airwolf.
Yeah,
Yeah,
or Blue
Airwolf.
Thunder.
There you go.
It just sounds awesome.
Roy Schneider.
Yeah, exactly. So, man, I love that guy. Anyway, I also want to give a shout out to one other Western game that no one's announced or talked about here, but I adore, which is Gun.
Yeah, I played Gun.
Oh yeah,
I love Chris
That was great.
Christopherson. Yeah, it was, and Thomas Jane as the main character. That was very much an LA noir style game where the world was there, but it wasn't as filled with, like gather 10 of 10 beaver pelts so that you can build yourself a pair of shoes. It was far less of that. So, moving on from there, Master Tool wanted to talk about QTEs because they are his favorite part of games. And he wanted to
Yes, they
mention
are.
it. No, I'm just joking. So what did you want to bring up about QTEs, and
that.
what question did you have?
So the question as a whole is what everyone thinks of QTEs.
Mhm.
Should they still have a place in games, or it occurred to me after I was done playing God of War. I'm just putting it that way now. There's this one scene that is extremely epic while you play it, but looking back, I basically just sat there and pressed a button and pressed
Right.
a button, and I pressed another button again, which somehow takes away from the experience looking back.
Mhm.
Then you have those moments where you move a boulder or do some other shit, but basically you just mash one button, or if you go into the options, you hold the button.
Mhm.
I'm still not sure what to think of that. And then you have the exact opposite, something like Azura's Wrath, where you have QTE, the movie, the game,
Mhm.
which was, as a whole, pretty awesome, yeah, but, I mean, can you still call it a game?
Okay, gotcha. Well, it sounds like you don't. I mean, what's your opinion on it?
Oh, I never played it, but it looks absolutely awesome.
What about yeah, so you haven't played No Way Out, or you have played No Way Out?
No, don't mean No Way Out, but Azura's Wrath.
Oh, okay. Well, I was asking about like other games and just QTEs in general. Do you believe that if it's a QTE heavy game, is it a game?
Depends on how QTE heavy and how contextual. If it just is a handful of times and with variation, that I don't have to press one button and some else, but actually have to do something that indicates on the screen that I'm actually doing something.
Have you played? This is a phenomenal game, especially the ending. Have you ever played Indigo Prophecy at the ending when you turn it out? It's Fahrenheit. If anybody's played that game, you basically transform into the Matrix battle at the end. It goes from
I see gameplay from it. It looked absolutely amazing.
It was just like you go from normal to suddenly Simon Says with both controllers in a fucking such a short span of time. So Silver QTEs, like, I mean. I'm trying to think. So Azura's Wrath, if I'm pronouncing that right, that was hugely QTE. God of War allows you, like Master Tool said, to, of all things, basically turn off the button press and just hold the button, which I found really weird. And then you have like trying to think of other. Well, No Way Out is
Telltale Games.
Telltale Games.
Always.
Many parts. Do you consider? I mean, I assume I'm going to know your answer, but do you consider them games? And what do you like and dislike about those?
I mean, of course, I consider them games. I mean, fundamentally, a lot of games could be argued that they're sort of QT because a lot of combat games rely on visual cues, and then you have to hit a certain button combination, either a combo or a parry combo or whatever. So they are kind of QTEs in that way as well.
Right.
So yeah, I certainly consider them games, but I mean, it's all a question of balance and context because, I mean, Jurassic Park, the Telltale game, is
Not
I
good.
think an example of it not being done very well and being done to like
That's an
absurd
understatement.
levels.
Yeah.
Like you mentioned Fahrenheit. Fahrenheit is another where you not only just the Matrix fight, but there are like hallucinogenic dream sequences in that game where you have to like quick time event away from giant bugs and such that are really weird and don't really add anything to the game at all. They're sort of there. So yeah, it's all a question of context, because quick time events can be a good way to involve you in a cutscene and get you engaged in a cutscene so that you're not just sitting there like in Yakuza or in Metal Gear Solid 4 and watching a 4-hour cutscene or whatever.
Yeah, right.
But you're actually invested in the cutscene and you have to follow it and you have to engage with it.
Yeah.
So it can be good in that way. But yeah, it's all a question of context, how it appears in the game, how it's built into both the plot and the mechanics of the game.
What about you, Code Gangsta?
Yeah, I agree. Like it is all about context. I mean, there's certainly a lot of times where I'll be playing a game with QuickTime events and not enjoy it. But I think when it's done right, it kind of gives you that sense of urgency around a cutscene. So instead of you passively watching, you kind of feel like you're playing a part in it. And I don't know, like technically how you could pull off that kind of thing anyway else, right? Because QuickTime events, you're basically taking yourself out of the combat system or out of any gameplay loop that the game has at its core, and you're trying to introduce something that's shaking it up and making it different. And I think when it's added in that way, it can be really effective. I think God of War recently has done a pretty decent job at it. There's a couple of places where I'm like, not so much, but it's honestly, it's hard to pull off, because if you wanted to introduce something like if you fail this QuickTime event, then this other thing happens and it makes these big repercussions. Now you're just increasing the scope of your cinematics drastically, right? Because you have all these branching paths. So.
Yeah. What about you, Reg?
Well, the classic press X, press circle QuickTime events I absolutely despise. I could very well do without them being in any game at all. However, I think there are ways where you can do it and where it adds to the game. Like, for example, dodging while the enemy is sitting on top of you.
Right.
Is something that's still QuickTime event-ish, but it makes sense in the action. It makes sense to now dodge left while the enemy is sitting on your right, etc. So that's a way I think is okay. The disconnected press X now at this second, absolutely.
Gotcha. What about you, GB?
I see where in some games it's necessary to have QTEs, like Batman Telltale, for example. Obviously, that's just the way it works. I mean, the narrative is good, the story is good. Plus, you have some options, even in the QTE, like takedown or like
X or A. You know, you can choose.
Yeah, exactly. I don't mind options, but it's like several games I was interested in, I got turned off to because of the overabundance of QTEs, like Rise or Order. Like, they both look like beautiful games, but then I saw the gameplay of it. It's like every time it's like press X, press A, press B, press C. I'm like, I don't want to do that throughout the entire game. Give me some freedom, give me some options so I can either parry, dodge, or do like a power attack, or don't tell me what I have to do, because what's the point? Are you just going to hold my hand throughout the entire game?
Right.
That's kind of my issue with QTEs overall. But at the same time, I do understand that there's a place for them. It's just that some developers have used them in overabundance.
Yeah, for sure. What about you, Sleeve?
Exactly the same as Reg, pretty much. When you break down QTEs, they fall into two particular categories when they're going to work or not work. The length of the cutscene and the directional context of movement or action within that cutscene. So, like Reg, pressing the circle button over and over and over and over and over again to do one action or many actions that are all different, it makes no logical sense.
Right.
In something like Until Dawn or a Telltale game, you have directional and action-based sense within the input mechanisms. So you're moving left to dodge, you will move the stick left. You need to roll out the way, you'll roll out the way. You'll use the trigger and the stick combined to move, so it makes it more interesting. If you've got a 15-minute cutscene and halfway through it, you'll press an X a few times. Like a good example for me of a bad QTE is Resident Evil 5. So throughout Resi 5, there's loads and loads of little QTEs that appear. And there's one in particular where you end up having like a fight on a motorbike. I just felt so detached, sitting back, watching this elaborate motorbike fight, and I was just pressing a button over and over again, doing absolutely bugger all. So yeah, face buttons, if you're not going to use them in combination with the sticks or directional controls, or some way to contextualize them in relation to actual directional action, nah, thank you. So it's a difficult one. But then you look at something like Until Dawn, that does it really well, I think.
Yeah, I will say the one thing I don't like, I don't mind moving the character, but I fucking want to kill whoever thought it was a good idea in the Telltale games to have to move the cursor to a spot, then press a button.
Oh, yeah.
Resets in the center, and it'll be like, move to the right, highlight the gauntlet, press X. And I'm like, fuck you, I'm doing that. Like, that to me isn't a QTE at that point. It's a very poorly done control mechanism. And Until Dawn, you're usually moving and then pressing the button. That to me is a completely different thing than like highlighting a spot like you're playing Cobra Command on the Sega fucking CD. Like that is not the kind of game I'm looking for. But when it comes
if you take like Quantum Dream, if you take a Quantum Dream and you look at their games, some of them are just so overly complex. You get bored by doing them. Like Open into Heavy Rain when you're putting the dishes out and you're like, find the drawer and I've got to try and pull this and what the hell.
But that's context by making a boring action become a QTE.
Yeah, and literal limb action basically.
What I was going to bring up is the fact that, and this is going to piss a lot of people off, but there's free action games where the combos aren't set and where you can do anything at any time. And then there's Batman. And Batman is a QTE fest. And by the way, I like the Batman games, so I know people are going to get pissed. I like Mad Max, same thing. But that hit Y, Silver brought this up, where it's like all they've done in those is removed the button showing up on the screen. And they even actually show it at first when they tell you what to hit, where they're like, hit Y. Yeah. And then once you learn that, all they've really done is turned combat into an interactive cutscene. Because especially with Batman, you can I don't know if you guys remember, but you can parry in the last frame of animation. So you'll be ready to punch somebody. You are one frame away from hitting them. And if an enemy is behind you, you can hit Y, and your character will flip around and grab them, which, hey, it's Batman. Like, it still looks fucking awesome, right? And it gives you this feeling of power. But, QTEs to me, it's all about context. It's just like anything. I still find them gameplay, but they're just not as in-depth. I mean...
I thought of a really interesting example because Sleeve mentioned mashing the circle button, and that's actually something I think Metal Gear Solid did in a really interesting way a couple of times. Like the first Metal Gear Solid and Metal Gear Solid 2, there are torture sequences where you have to sit there and mash the circle button over and over and over again in order to pull through and survive. And it's physically exhausting for you as well as for the character.
Which was on purpose, right?
You also have to do it in 4 when you're crawling through the the heat furnace or whatever it is. I don't remember, like a microwave tunnel or whatever it is. And you have to mash it through there as well. As Old Snake, because so you basically kind of share in the physical exertion of your character in that way.
On the opposite side,
an interesting way of doing it.
Doesn't GTA have you torture somebody?
Yeah, it does.
As Trevor?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Yes.
In a QTE. So it's pretty crazy. I don't know. Yeah. It's a good question, but I think overall, like, people are down on them when they really. I mean, it's like any other part of gaming. Like if it's used too much without context, it starts to fall apart. Like, I think that's the main thing. And then when does anybody have anything to add to that before we move on to Master's next question about weapons?
Oh, I was just going to say that the whole argument. I was going to say the whole argument about the mashing the circle button is like the alternative that you have if you don't really have it integrated with the system and direction and movement and action is you're mashing other buttons, and I don't think that's fun in a lot of other cases either. So, in previous God of War games, like QTEs were all over the place.
Right.
And you can notice now in this God of War, there's, it's mostly circle button. But I think that was purposeful. Like, I don't think it's great, but, it's certainly a hell of a lot better than like, where's the triangle button?
Right.
Right. So, I mean, ideally, it would be awesome if it was integrated more into the actual actions of what you were doing. Maybe if you're doing a light attack, you would press R1. If you're doing a heavy attack, you'd press R2.
Right.
If you were to press, X.
Rise uses colors. Did you ever play Rise? Code Gangsta?
Yeah.
No, I haven't.
Game? Okay, so that uses colors like on the character, like red, yellow, blue, and so it requires like you to sort of look at the character, you not the button, like you're not seeing an X, you're seeing a color, and that I thought that was interesting. It was a little in your face, but
it turns them off on the hardest difficulty. I found.
Correct. Yeah. And that's not too hard because hardest difficulty in that game is a breeze because it's all the animations are so slow for everybody. But
it's overall, like climbing, isn't it? Think about climbing. Like if you're climbing, I don't want to be alternating between face buttons, and I don't want to be hammering a face button. What I want to be doing is that with the shoulders.
Right. Yeah.
Yeah.
Wait, Wit was the game that I failed. I streamed it. It was Until Dawn. You climb over that fucking fence
The wall.
at the starting, and
Yeah,
I
yeah.
failed because I hadn't played a PS4 game in so long because I'm not that's not the controller I love. So it was all Xbox, and they were like square, circle, blah blah blah, and I was like, "Fuck you,
Yeah.
man!" I kept falling, and I'm like, people were watching the stream, and I'm like, dude, I might just get stuck in this first like 5 minutes of this fucking game. I may never get over this wall. Yeah, they also. Thank you to all developers who've stopped using the light bar bullshit, where it's like, hold the light bar in the center of the screen and match it up. And I'm like, take your light bar.
And hold your controller still for 30
God.
seconds.
Cadiz came over and we were playing, I believe it's a Tomb Raider, and we were playing it. You had to balance, and he has his hands just slightly shake, but it's enough that the PS4 was like, nope, you're falling, and it was frustrating. You could tell. He was just like, okay, this is... Because hitting a button is a one-time thing. Holding something still, if you got a game that's high in adrenaline, I'm just not 100% sure you want to use some Bluetooth thing aimed at your fucking shitty camera to sort of hope that the PS4 can see it. The next thing...
Sorry, and the motion stuff as well. I just started Infamous 2 again, as I said, and that bloody... mechanic where you do the graffiti where you have to hold the controller up at the screen. Oh
my god, I forgot about that.
I mean,
no, thank you.
Yeah.
I actually like that one.
Well, why? Okay, so why did you like that one, Master Tool? Because it had you do something on screen that matched your controller, maybe? Is that why?
For one, yeah, and it was the first PS4 game I had.
Oh, okay, gotcha. What were you saying, Reg?
Yeah. Yakuza 6 combines all of them, all the possibilities with the controller.
All right.
With the baby scene, shaking the controller in all directions, it all matters in which direction you're shaking it. Using the touchpad to rub the baby's head.
Oh my god.
That's everything.
Wow.
Everything you could
None of
ever
it
dream.
works. And it's perfect. Perfect, horrible.
Anyway, okay, so moving on from that, people need to play that game. Master Tool also wanted to talk a little bit about weapons and quality versus quantity. So what were you thinking about that, Master Tool?
So just as a heads up, it is less like in most FPS that you have these days, where you start off with crappy weapons. After a while, you unlock better and better weapons, and at some point, you just use the best ones that you have.
Right.
What I mean with quality is that you actually have only a handful of them, but you only use those. In comparison to something like, the best example I could give is Battlefield 4, with the endless amount of weapons you have. You have the 3 general classes, so 3 general weapon classes for all different classes as your character, and you have one specific. And I don't know how many. I think it's about more than 200 guns and weapons in general you can have, something like that.
What do you?
I mean, you have a lot of options with customization and stuff, or.
What do you like better, Master Tool? Like, of those two?
I'd actually love to have a lot of variety. To actually play with something that is more crappy or something like that, but it's less dependent on unlocking and more
skill.
That's my preference.
Yeah. Gotcha. Sleeve, what about you? Like quality, quantity, what type of... Is there a game out there that you liked the weapon choice overall too?
Yeah, quality for me. I'm not... Like, a lot of my mates will go through these ridiculous amounts of different weapon types in first-person shooters or whatever, and I've got no idea what they are because I don't really know guns. So for me, that doesn't really matter. Something like Halo is perfect. You've got a nice, small, but very diverse range of weapons that all feel different, do different things, have a nice aesthetic kind of difference to them. That's what I prefer. I much prefer a smaller, more focused, and more differentiated set than just 400 blah.
400 blah. GB, it sounds like you agree.
Yeah, I do. I agree with these guys. One thing I have issue with in Grand Theft Auto, and I hope they remedy it in Red Dead Redemption 2, is I like the weapon wheel. I don't like the fact that we have all these tons of guns on us. You know, I like the fact that in Far Cry 5 and Mafia 3 and other games, you're limited. You can have one pistol, you can have one rifle or one shotgun or one heavy weapon, and then that's it. That's what I want because it feels more realistic. Plus, to be honest, of all the weapons that I have on the weapon wheel in Grand Theft Auto Online, most of them I don't even use. So I wish I could I know you can put them away in Grand Theft Auto Online now because there are like weapon safe now. But I wish that you just had the ability just to get rid of them or sell them. But at the same time, I just hope that that's something that we see a lot more in games going forward, where you have to pick and choose the type of weapons that you can't just carry everything on you magically.
What about you, Reg?
Fewer weapons for me. Fewer weapons that are more fun, that feel better, that handle good. I have nothing from 9 guns that are really shitty and then finally getting the one good one.
Right.
I rather just have a game that has the one good one from the start.
So what you're saying is Far Cry 5 should only have the M60.
Exactly.
Yep.
When I got that, it changed my life. But yeah,
and it's also I don't really experiment a lot. I think, for example, of Titanfall 2.
Yeah.
Where I basically I went to level 50 and regenerated, so reset my level in the multiplayer by playing the first Titan with the first weapon all the time. I never even tried a different Titan until I was regenerated once and then went through it again.
I kind of stopped caring if there's too many weapons about the weapons.
Right.
So like Diablo 3, after a while I was just like, I don't know what the hell this 100,000 different swords do anymore. I don't really care.
Well,
but like Dead Space is exact opposite. Really focused interest in different weapons.
Mm-hmm.
Code Gangster, what about you?
Yeah, I think the perfect example of this is From Software when they transitioned from having a ton of weapons and weapon classes in Dark Souls and Dark Souls 2 to then having a very much more consolidated list in Bloodborne.
Yeah.
So I can't really speak for first-person shooters, but man, those Bloodborne melee weapons were fantastic in the way that they transformed and their weightiness, and each one of them had very clear trade-offs, and you could tell a major difference between each of them, and that just made everything great. I mean, on that note too, I'm much more not a fan. I used to be a total fan of RPGs where you just get more and more weapons, the Diablo style, like you have a couple weapon classes, but then you just get endless amounts
just a
of upgrades.
pinata of weapons exploding around you.
I'm not into that anymore. I want to kind of find one weapon that really suits my playstyle and then find some major trade-offs between some of the other weapons or weapon classes to, if I wanted to change up my playstyle, I could, but really it's about finding that one weapon that you're like, this really suits the way I play. I mean, you brought up Halo, which is a perfect example of some just really, really confined set of weapons that all feel, look, act, and perform differently.
The Needler. Oh.
Yeah, Needler. Sorry, it's my favorite weapon. I know I'm in the low end, but yeah, except for us. Maybe that's why the International Podcast is together for so long. Our love for the Needler. It's like,
the Needler rocks, man.
Oh, dude, the Needler's the shit. Silver, what about you?
I think I'm probably a little weird in that I often go through games using only a single weapon. Like usually if it's a weapon that feels appropriate to the character and to the game for me. So like the Max Payne games, I'll use nothing but the 9mm handgun.
Right.
Because that feels appropriate to me that's what Max would be using. He wouldn't be pulling out an M16 from his jacket
right.
and just mowing people down with it. Like he would be doing the John Woo style slow motion jumping and such with a handgun. So that's sort of where I'm at. I don't often go through like in games that have a lot of weaponry, like say Ghost Recon Wildlands or whatever, where there's a wide selection. I still only usually go with like one or two, and that's what I stick with throughout the game. So I would say also like quality over quantity for me. But I mean, I appreciate the option of choice being there for other players with the quantity.
So for me, it's so weird because I'm sort of, I'm both. I definitely like Halo and stuff, but I admit gun porn in Call of Duty is awesome. I love that there's 18 M16s on the ground, and each one has a slightly different camo pattern, and you killed somebody. And it's funny because a lot of the bad guys will come towards you, and it's like none of them have the same weapon caliber. It'll be 7.62, 9mm, fucking 45. It's like, come on, an army would have the same fucking caliber. Like they would, you would think for the most part. But
that's the way armies function.
I love grabbing in those games like an M16 and it's got, a different sight and all that stuff. So in certain games that works really well. But Call of Duty, the longest scenarios, like Infinite Warfare might be the longest scenario. You're talking like anywhere from 10 to 14 hours, what have you. Anything longer than that, and I think I like more contained weapon sets. But it also depends on the weapon sets. Like, what is that game? Neo. Neo.
Yeah.
That
Yeah,
game.
yeah.
I loved the weapon sets in that game, and it really didn't have a ton.
Neo.
Yeah, the Kirsagama in that, the ball or the sickle and chain was fucking amazing in that game. So,
Yeah.
but it does depend on the game, I think, for me, for some strange reason.
Yeah.
Like,
And your play style, like in Far Cry 5, I got to the point where for like stealth attacks, I would use the bow and arrow, but for like, taking on a whole bunch of cultists, like you, I would use the M60 and go to town on them.
and I didn't, by the way. I did my review, and I only used the M60 like in the last hour, and it like when Reg and I decided to play, I had just got it, and we were playing. I was like, I love this fucking thing, because with the M16, the M16 does not hit with a lot of damage. In fact, it's like throwing Splenda packets at somebody's face. Sometimes you're like firing, it's like puh, 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 and you're all, it's not killing them. That M16 fucking destroyed people, man, and it was so cool to be that powered in those games. But yeah, it's interesting, man. It'll be also when we look at games. I'm hoping Borderlands can do it, Diablo can do it, but I don't want a lot of games like that where it's just like a pinata of weapons exploding from an enemy's face, and you're like, and then it's +1 to fire damage, but -2 to accuracy, and your brain is like in the middle of a firefight is all okay. What? Like,
What's weird is the characters I play in Diablo usually don't use weapons, like necromancers.
Right.
They have a weapon, but most of their powers are their spells, the ability to raise skeletons and
The witch doctor. Yeah, that's what I
golems.
use.
Yeah. Exactly. So you have a weapon, but all the other weapons you pick up, you're just selling, to get more gold. So it really depends on, I guess, the type of character you want to play as.
I really like the mechanic of being able to really grab a weapon and just be able to keep it for the rest of your campaign, whether that means you upgrade it along the way.
Yeah,
or
level
things
it up
like
maybe.
that. Because like the whole Borderlands thing, you're like, what if I really liked the camo on this
exactly.
gun, or
No,
I
that's
really
what I'm
liked the
talking
firing
about.
rate?
Or the whole
You have to throw it
seller
away.
thing.
Yeah, right.
Yeah.
That was honestly my favorite aspect of for an MMO of the Old Republic, was the fact that you could have use your starting lightsaber, and you could use that throughout the entire game till level 60, 70, whatever.
Yeah, I like
because
that.
you just kept changing the parts of the lightsaber.
Well, that makes sense because if you go by Jedi lore, whenever you get a crystal, you keep that crystal for life. That's your crystal. So
I go by Jedi lore in my real life.
Exactly.
Yeah, me too.
Of
course.
A lightsaber. Oh yeah.
Yeah, I've got
Yeah.
the same face, and I've chosen to keep it all my life,
Yeah.
despite the negatives that it causes me. So let's move on.
Tiny little bacteria. Yeah.
Let's move on to State of Decay 2.
Midichlorians.
So Sleeve had read some stuff that he was a little bit, I guess, tentative on State of Decay 2 that he read. So let's discuss that for a second. What did you read? What sort of got you a little nervous?
Okay, so I've been reading loads and loads of previews. There was a hands-on event. A lot of people have played it for a good amount of time now, little chunks. And a lot of people have been saying that it doesn't change a lot from the original, doesn't do a lot different. Got a few new enemy types. It's buggy as hell this close to release. And a lot of people are thinking, is this kind of going to be Sea of Thieves again? Not necessarily lacking content, but just not ready, really. And because Game Pass, Microsoft can just go out the door, and then we'll fix what needs to be fixed afterwards. And, one was janky. So it wasn't janky beyond playable, but it was janky. So it's just interesting to me that a lot of those same issues have cropped up when they've had a longer to work on it. They've got Microsoft, kind of really backing them. So I'm not sure. I'm very interested, but it worries me a little bit.
Do you think, though, I mean, not to be rude, but I mean, it's a zombie game that's based on survival and pick and...
Oh yeah. It's
so
going to have extra mechanics and stuff.
The same, to me, isn't necessarily really too shocking. It would be shocking if you could suddenly cast spells, but you can't.
Yeah.
Right? So, to me...
fucking rad.
Yeah, well, it would be sort of rad, but they changed some of the things that mattered the most to me so far, which is it's very dark at night, which does not happen in the original State of Decay at all. It's like the entire world's been baked with a fluorescent light in State of Decay.
Yeah.
So the idea that it's jet black, there's a video that they show where these zombies come out of a room that's dark because it's using iris detect, faking your eyes, adjusting to the darkness, and you can see the zombies at night, like sprinting, and all you see is their eyes, coming as they trudge through the door. I thought that was awesome.
The tethered co-op is a bit.
That's what I was
That's
what I was going to bring up, is that they did do something which scared the shit out of us, and that's that IGN said that or GameSpot said that the tethering is as tight, if not tighter, than Far Cry. Which, I thought it was going to be open. So I thought Reg and I did co-op in Far Cry, and Far Cry didn't allow for us to really go too far away from each other, but you could do some things. But in State of Decay, if you have 4 people playing, you can't tell me you're all not going to be bouncing, rubber banding back and forth.
Yeah, rubber banding.
Yeah, because
if it's like Halo, man, if it's like Halo, you're that close together and you just warp all the time,
right?
It's really going to detract from the experience.
Okay, so my understanding, I guess, because I didn't really follow it too much, was the fact that this was an online game, and I thought that it would be like an open world type, like apocalyptic zombie world, and you could like do whatever the hell you want, but you're part of the team, so you have to stay together.
That's what everybody thought.
That's what everyone thought. Yeah, exactly.
But and you don't have to stay together. It's just that the tethering is tighter than. I mean, I don't know if anybody really expected you could go to the far end of this giant map, and somebody else could go to the other far end. I did and would hoped for that, but technologically wise, it might not be feasible. But what we're hearing is that, and Far Cry 5 was noticeable. What we're hearing is that your tethering is insanely noticeable in this. And then Envance twittered them after we did our podcast when I told him about it, and he's like, "Hey, I hear this has happened." And they said people that it is a technical issue, that it'll be larger than what people are playing right now, and they don't think people will be unhappy. Okay. But I think personally, if they're mentioning it that way, we probably will be. I mean, just being brutally honest, if that's how they're responding to the tweet, my assumption is it will be highly noticeable by most of us.
So here's what's going to happen: like, you're looting some really sweet stuff, and you're like, "Oh, look at that!" And all of a sudden, one of your teammates is away, and you're like, "Boom, teleport!" Like, you son of a.
Well, I mean, that's the entire thing. Is like, what if you half kill one of the mini bosses, and if Silver, Reg, and and me and you are playing, and we all play differently, right? So it's like, if somebody's sprinting in and the other person wants to wait back, how far can they wait and snipe people? Because it has to be within sniper distance. So, I mean, otherwise, sniper rifles would be almost ineffective if you were doing multiplayer, because person would be warping. So, it's very nerve-wracking when I read that. I admit that, that scared the shit out of me, because that's, to me, is like one of the... I was really excited to get a patron, State of Decay group together and run around.
Yeah, really, really wanted to.
That would have been cool.
The idea of tethering back and forth would make it possible, but not as fun. Does anybody have anything to add to that particular part of the story, or anything to add about State of Decay? Code Gangster, are you interested in State of Decay? I don't know if I've asked you.
I haven't really looked at it all that much, but from what you guys are talking about, I'm not huge into like survival zombie games. But from what you guys are talking about with the tethering and everything, it sounds like I don't know. Have you guys heard any news as to what kind of tech they're using for the actual multiplayer? Because it sounds like they don't have a dedicated server setup, or at least simulation really happening on the server. It's really just like this peer-to-peer.
I don't think it is dedicated. Yeah, I think dedicated's going later, from what I understand.
Which that would explain why the tethering would probably happen. Just because it would be, it's not like a GTA 5 or anything.
You just think though, Microsoft have got the
GTA 5 is
clouds in the world. What's one use that?
Yeah.
GTA 5 is peer-to-peer. It doesn't have dedicated servers for GTA 5. What?
That's what I've heard. I'm not.
Yeah, it doesn't have dedicated. It should, since it's made so much freaking money. Yeah. Maybe Red Dead Online will actually be dedicated. That'd be.
I'm
nice.
telling you right now, Rockstar, buy Peru, fill it with just dedicated servers. I don't know why Peru, by the way. I don't know what's going on with Peru in my brain, but I think it's because it's a cool sound. Peru sounds like a magic spell.
Land of llamas and pan flutes.
I think every land should technically be the land of llamas and pan flutes. So when it comes to State of Decay, I mean, I'm sure I'll like it. The original was janky as hell. Janky as hell, man. That frame rate in the 360 version was sub 10 in multiple places, but goddamn, that game was fun. And I love the fact that everybody can die. I still remember when the main character died, and I thought the game was over, and it was like, now you're Billy Bob, and I was like, what the fuck? Because the story was based on him, and then the story like pretty well organically adjusted to that other character who then died, and the other character who then died, and by the time I was done, I think the only people that lived in my game were the people I had saved after saving another group of saving people. Like it was 3 generations deep, which is why I liked it.
So are these like specific characters that they've already created for the game that you can play as?
What it does, it takes these names from a database, and then it gives them skills and stats that
attributes,
and a background that makes sense for those attributes. Military might have a higher, might have a special weapon, that kind of stuff. And then what happens is the way they tell their story appears to be detailed, but if you sort of read it, it can be replaced by anybody. It's a little like GTA with Trevor and Michael. Like you can do some of those missions with both, and the story, it's just them in the cutscene. And that's what happens in this game. Yeah. So
it's like reading your Zodiac sign in the newspaper. You just read what you want to read. Like, oh yeah, of course that applies to me.
That was one hell of a stretch for a comparison, but I just now got it. Yes, that is actually what it is somewhat. Yeah, for sure. Did anybody beat that or continue to play it like I did? Was I the only one who did State of Decay and played it?
No, I played it.
Yeah, I also finished it.
I haven't played it enough now.
Gotcha. Did you do the expansions, Reg? Or did you say fuck that?
No, not the expansion. Just the stock version.
Yeah, I'm stoked. I'm stoked to see how it's going to turn out. It's Microsoft. I don't know. Sea of Thieves, it doesn't matter, I guess, right? Like, I wasn't in love with it, but boy, it did fine for them. So maybe this will be the same way. Where, like, it does great, and maybe I don't like it, and it doesn't really matter. I mean, Sea of Thieves has done really well for them. Freddie Prinze Jr. is still playing it, so I guess that's what matters. I always tease him on Twitter because, like, I'm playing Injustice, which is how we started talking, and then every time I go on, he's got another, like, Sea of Thieves thing, and I'm like, how are you finding content in that game? Like, what the hell? How are you doing that? Like, your actors must be even more magical than I thought originally. Does anybody have any subjects to bring up prior to closing this out? We've gone for an hour and 20. Anybody have any?
Well, God of War, yeah.
What about it?
I've been playing it on Give Me God of War, the hardest difficulty setting. And as I kind of touched on in the early discussion, I'm not quite as in love with it as a lot of other people. Like reading some of the reviews, the main discrepancy I get is they don't really seem to be a lot of mentions as to the camera and how bad the camera really is in that game. Right. Especially like the FOV. Now I play the game with the HUD off, as is my usual way to play, and so I don't have indicators for enemies, and because the FOV is so narrow, I often don't really have a good sense of where enemies are, and like 90 to 95% of my deaths are because of the narrow FOV on that difficulty, where you'll get one shot by a sniper off camera or whatever, or an enemy will just come lunging in at you from out of nowhere. Which really sort of kills the experience. And I do appreciate with the Give Me God of War difficulty that they don't just buff up the enemies and give them more health, though they do that as well, unfortunately. But enemies can mutate, so they'll boost up a level, and they'll heal when doing so, and they'll become more resistant to stagger, get higher defense, gain more health as well. And some of them will gain more attacks. Their attacks will become more powerful as well. So,
it's funny.
So it isn't just a meat shield.
It's funny, Silver, because I still see what you just described as a advanced meat shield. So to me, what you just described is the poorest type.
It is meat shield as well, but they don't just meat shield them. They do also gain new attacks and such. But I do wish that they wouldn't meat shield them as much, because it is enormously tedious. I don't mind the fact that you die in 2 or 3 hits. That's fine with me. But the fact that they just shrug off every attack, you can't really start combos on Give Me God of War, because that would get you killed. You can't really throw your axe all that much, because stopping up to throw your axe will get you killed by a projectile thrower somewhere.
That's why
it's basically all about parrying constantly. You have to parry attacks, you have to parry projectiles, throw them back at the enemy.
Yeah.
Parry, block, evade, parry, block, evade, and then counter and whittle them down gradually.
It's
throw
weird,
them off
though.
ledges and such.
It's weird that they took Kratos and turned him into, Inigo Montoya from fucking Princess Bride, where he can't attack.
It's probably
he has to parry all the time.
One of my biggest issues with the game is that Kratos has this super strength, so why doesn't he just knock Draugr into orbit?
Right. Yeah, exactly. Exactly. And in the
why
hardest
is he standing there
difficulty,
whittling away at a health bar?
I don't like in the hardest difficulty that they turn him into a human, basically. Like that's the one thing I really don't like. If you want everybody to be harder,
I wish they'd gone for a glass cannon set where you can die in 1 or 2 hits still, but you can also still kill the enemy relatively easily.
Hits. Right.
Yeah, you're powerful as well. You're as powerful as the enemy.
Go ahead.
That would have been a better way to do it, I think.
Yeah.
But overall, I'm enjoying it. Presentation is really, really good, even on the regular PS4, which is what I'm playing it on. Script, really good so far, even though Kratos, as Reg has mentioned time and again, really overuses the word boy. It's poor writing of the sort that you often see in movies where characters will constantly who know each other will constantly address each other using their name. So they'll constantly go, "Hey Gary, hey Gary, hey Gary,"
right?
Even though they're familiar with each other,
Gary.
and it isn't necessarily something. I mean, I don't do that a whole lot with my friends. I just go, "Hey," and we talk.
I use last names. I say Mr.
French name or whatever.
Yeah.
Hey, this is some variety. Hey, you, get over here.
Master Tool was going to say something though about combat. What were you going to say?
Regarding the whole Kratos being basically a god and not punching enemies into orbit, there's actually a lore and plot reason for that.
Go for it. Or can you explain it without destroying anybody's?
No, be careful now.
No spoilers.
Because I feel
because he hates himself. He wants to be mortal, so because he hates himself, he basically doesn't want to use his powers.
I feel like that is a B-level actor or novelist's get out of jail free card to me.
Especially because he's throwing around boulders and such, so it's not really.
Yeah, boulders. He's a god, for crying out loud. Come on.
Yeah. What difficulty, Master Tool, did you play on? Just normal or hard?
In the beginning, I played on hard, and after a while, I think, after the first optional boss kicked my ass, I started to play on normal.
I almost said the name of it. Yeah. What about you, Code Gangster? What did you play? Difficulty.
Oh, I'm playing on normal right now. I'm about 10, 12 hours in. The one question I had was, you mentioned the kind of the glass cannon style of hard difficulty. Can you guys name any games where that was implemented really well?
Mass Effect 2.
Yeah, Mass Effect 2. I remember people talking about that. Like they felt 3 didn't do it as well, but 2, it seems like people really liked that. Arma does it all the time. Like Arma is one of my favorite games, and I feel that Arma, other than being able to shoot you from 8,000
Mass Effect 2's Insanity difficulty added armor and such to a lot of enemies, so it basically did meat shield them. It didn't do glass cannon as such.
It just buffs them.
Yeah.
In 2?
Yeah, it adds armor and extra barriers and such to enemies, so that you have to get through in order to get to their health bar. Yeah. So it does meat shield them.
It might depend on your play style too, in 2, because there's some builds that can just annihilate shields.
Also, it depends on your idea of meat shield versus meat shield with extra augments. Because I think what Sleeve is saying is the exact same thing. He doesn't give a shit how they narratively explain it. It's just like, is it glass cannon? Right. Yes, it is. It doesn't matter if they wear a fucking helmet now, or what. It is or isn't glass cannon versus Silver describing it more as a bullet list of like, if it does this, then maybe it's this. I think that's just different, not only playstyles, but also just different things that you focus on in the game. Because narratively, I don't like that Kratos is turned into a normal person on that hardest difficulty. Regardless, it just doesn't work for me.
Yeah.
So there's ways around it that I feel that they were headed for and didn't do. But it's not bad. That's fine, because that's 1%
a bit funny,
of people
though, because
who play it.
I tried to go back to the hard difficulty after playing and finding it a bit tedious to play on Give Me God of War, and I've just been breezing through the Give Me a Challenge difficulty, like barely getting hit in fights.
Well,
so
that's
it has
pretty
built
normal.
up my skill level.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. I mean, what's the enemy? Did anybody play Neo but me? Oh,
Yeah, I did, but I haven't gotten very far into it yet.
There's one. There's a lady who's a flying enemy. She's like the second boss only. But I am telling you,
Yeah, I remember you
it
talking
is
about
a
her.
perfect example of a developer having a skill ramp and saying, okay, when you do pass this person, which is going to be a while, but when you do, your skill is going to make the prior stuff you did that you thought was difficult feel like, what the fuck? How was I not able to do that? And I remember beating her, and from that point on, every normal character I fought, I was like, whatever. You know, you're just like, yeah, it's fine. Yeah. It's easy. That's
Dark Souls,
really
isn't it? It's
design.
just the same principle with Dark Souls. You know, they throw
If it's
these
done
massive
well, I don't
difficult
think
enemies at you.
I don't think all of Dark Souls does it well. But yeah, if I think Bloodborne might do it better, but that's because Bloodborne's focus is aggressiveness, where Dark Souls is more overall.
Defense.
Yeah, Bloodborne did it pretty excellently. They have a couple skill challenges like in the game just that kind of teach you some deeper mechanics. I mean, even the second boss, Father Gascoigne, is like a huge aggressiveness play.
Yeah.
Well, it's a pattern, just like in Zelda Breath of the Wild. Like at first you're like, how the hell do I take these guys out? But once you start figuring out what they're doing and how they work, then you know how to counter them with the right weapon or weapons. And then it becomes a lot easier to take down a whole bunch of enemies.
I think normally that's for sure true, but I think what I'm talking about in particular, is a guy who, when you face them, they are 10 times harder than everyone else. And so there's that
happens too.
Yeah, and that's what that one character felt like to me in Neo. It was like when I faced him, I was like, what? Because the ogre in the boat was hard, but that's because it was in a boat. It was contained. It was a tight area. But then later when you play... also, I was playing with that fucking stupid ball and chain, which I didn't realize was supposed to be like the most difficult weapon to use. And I'm like, man, it's fucking taking me forever to kill this guy. And people are like, listen, dumbass, you're using the weakest weapon. I was like, well, I know that, but I thought it would be easier at least. So yeah, it's very cool when we get games that do that.
I did have one room on Give Me God of War that was one of the biggest bullshit rooms I've had in my gaming history, which was where you go in and there are like 5 wolves or such.
Yeah.
And it's a tiny little room.
It's a tiny little room.
So,
I know the way.
So a lot of the time you have your back against the wall, and the FOV can't handle your back against the wall. So you can't see anything half the time. And the wolves are just relentless, and they will 1 to 2 shot you on Give Me God of War.
Wow.
That was in like the vault, right?
It's a nightmare. Yeah.
Yeah, that room sucked.
There's one room in Mass Effect 2 that's the same. Exactly the same. I think Karak and I have talked about it.
I know the exact room you're talking about.
About halfway through the game, I think it is, and you get locked inside this room with 3 huge robots and a biotic user, and you just get your ass kicked over.
They dribble you like you're a basketball. I remember going in there and it was like missile, and I was like, Jesus fuck! What is happening?
Oh shit! Yeah.
Because wasn't it that game? You can adjust the difficulty down, right? Because I'm pretty sure I could not get past that room and I had to adjust it down, which is rare. Usually you can do it. It just may suck. But I think
I just about did it in the end.
I can't continue playing.
I think in Mass Effect 2 it helped me that I played through Insanity as an infiltrator, so I could cloak and then just run off.
Oh yeah, I didn't do that.
I was full on biotic.
To cover.
Yeah, I think I'm such a cheapskate. I'm always like the normal soldier in those games. Like
soldier guy.
Yeah, or in MMOs, I'll be like, do you want to be an elf who gets a +1 to dexterity but a -1 to strength? I'm like, no, human.
Warrior.
Yeah, I'm
human all the time. It's just like whatever. I don't want the mini maxing unless there's a real cool thing that comes about.
Yeah.
Do we have anything else then to discuss before we wrap this up?
Just open world and hub world. Just because we're talking about God of War, that's all really. I am starting to feel like I really, really like hub worlds a lot more than these ridiculously over top open world games that spew markers everywhere and have
Can we all agree that God of War is not open world? Because I think it's hub world.
No,
I think it's more of a hub.
World.
Yeah,
it's hub world. Yeah.
So is it? So you guys are tired of open world? Some of you. I can say I'm not. I'm not. Yeah.
I'm not tired. Yeah. I'm just a little bit bored of a lot of the same kind of problems and tropes of open world games. Yeah.
Gotcha.
I mean, no towers in the last couple of Ubisoft games.
I know. Reg beat it. Reg fucking beat the last 2 games, which there must not.
The Origins had towers, and he even completed all the towers.
Well,
he's finishing games all the time now.
I mean, I did complete all Far Cry's and most of the Assassin's Creed. So.
You just bitched about it the entire time. I'm just joking.
Exactly.
No, I don't remember if you did. I'm assuming it must have come up though, just because we're talking about it right now. But yeah, I don't know about you guys, but it does feel like open world has tropes that hub-based games can sort of get away or switch things up enough. They don't feel as, tropish or collectorish. Like, I still remember, I think it's Black Flag. Which one introduces those motherfucking papers that fly away from you?
Black Flag, yeah.
Oh,
Yeah.
Black Flag.
So
Oh,
annoying.
oh my God. That's been
Mhm.
rare where I've been that frustrated when I tried to grab the first one and it flew away.
Yeah.
And I'm like, it's a paper,
Don't
motherfucker.
remind me, the fucking first one on that island.
Yeah. First one on the island, which I still pretty sure I don't have. I think I got the other ones. I think it was that one on
Yeah.
that island.
I just gave up after a while. I'm like, fuck it.
Yeah, right.
Back to the boat I go, lads.
These guys can sing the same 7 songs. I don't give a shit.
yeah.
Yep.
Mostly Drunken Sailor.
Is anybody like lately been impressed by an open world? Very impressed? Like really impressed with an open? Like,
Yeah, Assassin's Creed
Horizon?
Origins for Silver, you said?
Yeah.
What
Yes.
impressed you about that?
Just the whole world design, just getting lost in that world, like wandering the ancient world, which is one of my favorite historical settings.
But
yeah.
let's
Ancient
say, do you think it was just because it was Egypt for you, though? Or do you think it was
no?
just design?
It was not just that it was Egypt; it was the whole world design. I think the villagers actually felt alive. There were children playing,
True, yeah.
and such. People going about who appeared to go about their lives. It felt alive to me. The
Okay,
game world.
Mhm.
that makes sense.
Yeah.
That makes sense. Code Gangster, are there any that you've been impressed with?
I really like Breath of the Wild because I think it departed from a lot of the typical like collectathon trips. Although there was still a lot to do. You had your shrines and everything, but
Oh, yeah.
it didn't. At least for me, it didn't feel like you just automatically said, "Here are all the things that you need to go do on the map." It was
Mhm.
more like, just go in a direction and have fun. That was super nice. I didn't feel any kind of urgency to go do stuff that I felt. I mean, I have really limited time to play games. So for
Right.
me, I didn't want to waste my time with anything. I wanted to kind of jump in and know that I can get a good experience in 10, 20 minutes. And that's what the Switch is like awesome for. So I thought Breath of the Wild really nailed it. It could have been too that the Switch was portable. And so they kind of had to structure the open world elements around not having a ton of time to play.
Poop gaming.
So I think that
that's what we're
certainly
going to call it
influenced
from
it.
now on. Poop gaming. Whenever you have
What's
to take
that?
a poop, you grab the Switch.
Yep.
Portable poop gaming. Reg,
Leg killer.
is there any? Yeah, exactly. As your legs are all numb and shit from sitting on the shitter. Is there any open world games you've been super impressed with?
Forza Horizon.
Oh
I
yeah,
would say it's
so true.
is one of my favorite ones.
Yeah.
Mhm.
And you and I never even played co-op on that, have we? It was completely separate. Like,
No, I
we didn't
don't
get a
think so.
chance to do that. Oh man, such a good game. Master Tool. Any open world games?
Less impressed, but pleasantly surprised by Far Cry 5.
Gotcha.
But I think
What about Origins? I can't remember if you liked Origins.
no,
Yeah.
Oh wow.
not enough content. Too much sand, too much empty space.
Oh gotcha.
Rejected.
That was a
Too
reg.
much sand.
That was right, man. Too much sand. You guys rock. Too much.
Too coarse and it gets everywhere.
So, where's your game based? Well, we're based in the Middle East and Africa. So, where is there any sand? Yeah, there's too much. Just we don't like it. Pacific
Far
Northwest,
too
too many
much sand.
trees. Alan Wake's got way too many trees. Way too many. Pacific Northwest has nowhere near those trees. What about you, GB? You can't mention
I'm
Take
not.
Two though.
I'm not.
Go for it.
Okay. All right. I would say the last open world game, the most recent, let's say most recent that's come out, is either Zelda Breath of the Wild or Horizon Zero Dawn. I was very impressed with both those
Yeah.
open worlds. I really enjoyed playing Far Cry 5, but overall, I was not necessarily impressed with that open world. It looks okay.
But it was just fun.
It could have been. Yeah, it was just fun.
Yeah.
I mean, it was a great experience. It was fun, but the open world itself, I think it could have been better.
Yeah, I do like the fact that apparently when you jump in a vehicle, you're immediately targeted by every man-made,
Mhm.
natural fucking. It doesn't matter. Everything is after you. Like,
Yep.
those guys can. As somebody was saying in the other podcast, those guys can zoom in on you from 6 miles away and go, "That's definitely the guy we want to kill." You're like, oh,
And then you have to throw away your deputy uniform. Like, what's the point?
Yeah, exactly. It's not disguising.
Yeah, and you never get it back. Like,
Yeah.
It would be nice to get it as a reward for completing the game or whatever.
What about you, Sleeve? You brought it up, but is there any that have been super impressive?
I'd agree with Go in terms of Horizon, but if we're going to do just a couple of different ones, I'd say Far Cry Primal is pretty cool. It's nicely designed. I like the environments.
Yeah.
I think it's a bit smaller than your standard Far Cry, which gives it a little bit more kind of a variety in places.
Mhm.
And also Mad Max. Mad Max is very well designed, I think. The way the different levels of sand work, and you can kind of, I think you talked about it in one of your walk up, the seabed kind of being still there, like remnants under.
Yeah.
And just like when you come across towns, and I think it's very well spaced and designed in terms of the pacing for a game like that.
Yeah.
If anybody gets a chance, you should check out Mad Max. I think it's fucking like $1.
Those
or some
fucking
shit.
stones.
Oh,
man.
it's really cheap.
So
now.
amazing.
The storms, Master
Yeah.
I love them.
Sandstorms.
Yeah, they were. I don't even know how they did the graphics at that point because that looked real. Like they did a phenomenal job. I got my ass kicked all the time, but because I'd always stay out, they'd be all, "Do you want to collect the cart or the crates?" You could go, like crates would be flying around, and it would just kill me every time. Oh, bastards! Like I'd be all, "Oh man," because there was good stuff in some of those, like a ton of money, but I always ended up dying. Never paid off.
Rip.
Yeah, for Mad Max it was just dead max by the time I was done because I died a lot in that game, especially at first. Like, did anybody else do the first person mode in the car for a little while?
Yes,
Yeah.
I did it nearly the entire game.
Blower vision, where all you saw was a blower and like a 1 inch by 1 inch section of the road. I still remember when I found that view. I'm like, what the? No wonder Mad Max crashed his car every movie. Like you can't see anything. You guys, if you guys think God of War is tight, go fucking look at Mad Max first person car footage, and you will be stunned that anybody can drive. It looks cool. It looks amazing, but holy shit, it's a disaster trying to drive it. That's it for us. I want to thank Code Gangsta for jumping in. This is his first time doing it, and held up well. I even got to introduce his family for a moment. I saw your child come in. That was awesome.
Yeah.
I definitely appreciate you taking the time to jump in here. Appreciate all the patrons who are watching to this point, which is an hour and probably 35 some odd minutes into the podcast. If you guys have any comments, go ahead and leave them in the comments section, and I will try to take care of them, try to get you back an answer. Make sure they're nice. If they're not, I'm just going to ban you and hate you forever. Peace out, everybody. Enjoy the rest of your week or weekend.
Take care.